China has gone after Secretary of State Mike Pompeo for suggesting the coronavirus escaped from a Wuhan lab by saying that he, quote, betrays Christianity with lies, an accusation that is actually a fairly accurate job description for anyone working in the Trump administration.
Hey, today is Cinco de Mayo, so be sure to sprinkle some Ajax on the rim of your Cloroxita.
The Ohio Department of Family Services has a website that allows employees to give the Ohio Department of Job and Family Services has a website that allows employers to give the department details any workers who have not returned to work. This, of course, comes on the heels of the state's new slogan, Ohio, we're Florida with shitty weather.
One researcher says that if the pandemic were a baseball game, it would be the second inning. But you would have already eaten 3 hot dogs, garlic fries, peanuts, 4 beers, and a vegan tostada from the club level.
Oh, the vegan tostada. That's what I miss about baseball. A former Green Beret has taken responsibility for a failed boat raid aimed at overthrowing Venezuelan President Nicolas Maduro. But he really didn't need to take responsibility, considering that President Trump has already blamed Ted Cruz's dad.
Swarms of killer hornets have arrived in the U.S. from Japan. So they're looking to make important business deals and visit some American strip clubs.
And finally, in a new Netflix documentary, Michelle Obama talks about how she changed the dress code for White House butlers because she didn't want Malia and Sasha growing up thinking African-American men serve them in tuxedos. Good thing she didn't come to my Sweet 16 party, replied Ivanka Trump. The Trump Report starts now.
I'm Maria Menounos, and you're tuned in to AfterBuzz TV, the ESPN of TV talk. Now, let the buzz begin.
Welcome to the Trump Report. Christian Blatt here with the whole gang. Of course, we have Tamara Brown, who brought some funny with me.
Smooth move, Scott. Just purposely skipped the joke portion.
Yeah, well, that's what most people do. And of course, Chelsea Galicia in her very comfortable padded room.
Yes. I thought the jokes were great today. Scott, you missed out.
Of course.
I love the way she's stressed today, because usually, yikes. Well, Scott, you weren't here last week, but that doesn't mean that we're not going to serenade you. Well, we won't sing, but happy birthday, birthday boy. Scott Moore.
Thank you.
Thank you for being here.
I'm wearing my quarantined birthday shirt still for all of my fellow quarantine birthday
you know
folks
what?
out there last
You just gave
months.
me a great business idea.
That's not a birthday suit. That's not a birthday shirt.
You just gave me a great idea for a business. Quarantees. They're t-shirts specifically for right now. So nobody steal it just because I put it out on the show. In any case, there's a lot of stuff to talk about as always, but most of it's virus related. But let's start off with the not virus stuff. Joe Biden finally felt the need to address the harassment / assault allegations against him that we've been talking about for a few weeks here. And I'd like to see how everybody feels we stand on this issue now compared to a week ago. I mean, he has spoken to it, sort of basically what his campaign had said before. But Tamara, how do you feel? I literally almost called him President Biden. How do you feel former Vice President Joe Biden did in addressing these allegations? By the way, the woman's name is Tara Reid, and I'm sorry, that's very confusing that the woman's name is Tara Reid, because we all think of, at least I do, actress Tara Reid, American Pie Tara Reid. Oh, sorry, I forget to use air quotes for actress.
Well, I think she's been out of the general lexicon for a good 10 to 15 years.
Okay, so somebody apparently hates Sharknado. All right, I understand what you're saying.
6 Sharknadoes ago, I think that ship has sailed. I think, he denied anything happened. I found that a handful of Democrats that I follow are defending him. I stand by, I think when we first initially brought this up, I said, and I still just feel this way, is that it's like, what are we going to do? We have to vote for him. no matter what. So I don't. I'm leaning more towards, personally. Do I think he's guilty or innocent? I think I'm leaning more towards guilty, but I don't know. But either way, I'm voting for him. So this puts me in voters in a weird position where it's like, it's not that we're being hypocritical. We wanted to have a trial for Kavanaugh, and why isn't there the same sort of lens put on Biden that there was during all of that? And I just think it's because we have to. It did make me.
It's because the media is rigged in favor of a certain ideology, and they have a candidate that they like. And by the way, you said you have to vote for him. Perhaps you haven't heard about young Justin Amash, who is, of course, taking no one by storm, but he is an option. You could vote for him.
A little bit
He should
right?
He should actually be campaigning on, hey, I haven't harassed anybody, unless, of course, he has, in which case that's a really bad slogan. So maybe that's why he's not running on it. I'm sorry. You can finish your thought, Tamara. I just wanted.
Well, I was just going to say this is the first time ever where I sort of, when the also, isn't it, Biden is being accused of the exact thing that Trump admitted on the Access Hollywood tape. And I guess, when that happened, and I just thought, how could you possibly support this guy who would say such a horrible thing, Trump's Access Hollywood tape? And it's just like, oh, I guess I understand now, because you have to. You don't support that. But when you're so far against, any sort of supporting any policies of that party, then you have to.
Yeah, I mean, I guess the question that you can ask for people who are just like, well, I can believe this account, but I'm still going to vote for him anyway. Then the question becomes, all right, what would you be willing to not overlook? Would you vote for Harvey Weinstein? This isn't for you. This is just for everyone. Just more of a general question. Would you vote for Harvey Weinstein? Would you vote for Roman Polanski? Would you vote for O.J. Simpson? So it just kind of depends on if people are convinced by it. And look, I'm only bringing this up for devil's advocate. There have been many years in which these allegations could have come up. They didn't come up when he was vetted for vice president, past runs for president. So there are certainly questions about it that come up. There can be a million reasons why you didn't, or there only needs to be one reason why not to, but that's what everybody gets to ask. So it just depends on how important it is as to whether or not she's telling the truth. And I think for a lot of people that they see the options as Biden or Trump, they're like, yeah, I'm going to pretty much overlook everything that we're going to find out about Biden. Chelsea, your thoughts on how he has addressed this and where we stand with the allegations today?
All right. So, I kind of agree with what, Tamara was saying. Is like, this moment forces the people who said, I would never vote for somebody like that, to have to say, well, actually, maybe I would. And I think this is true of people of both sides. We have to do things that we think we would never do. But having said that, I see this a little bit differently. I know that we should believe women, and that would be my default. This particular case looks bizarre to me. This is not Joe Biden's first time running for public office, not for a very high public office. The fact that it came out now, why not when there were still 45 candidates running for the Democratic nomination? So when I look at this particular case, and I hate to be the one who is looking at the nitty gritty in the case where it benefits my candidate, which of course I'm a very reluctant supporter. So I can see that might make me look like I'm being, holding him to a special standard just because, we're relatively on the same side of things. But I do have my suspicions about this accusation.
Well, to be fair, it's exactly what people said about Christine Blasey Ford's allegations against Brett Kavanaugh was, why are you doing it now? And then that explanation is, well, he wasn't going to be a Supreme Court justice. So it could be, well, now he might become president. and I've really not
Vice
wanted to
president-
relive this. Your vice president is still pretty big, but it's not, you're not, I understand both sides of it. I'm just sort of,
this would have been a good
explaining
thing to come out with, like, I don't know,
a
8
year
weeks
ago.
ago.
A year ago
Yeah,
would
or
be good.
six weeks ago. That's what I mean. I said previously, like the timing is so strange because to make an impact, and this is a woman who worked in politics. Like I would think that if this were a strategic move on her part, I just don't know why now. It would have made more of an impact 6 months ago, 8 months ago.
Yeah, look, they're valid questions, and I think people just need to come to terms with how they feel about it, and I think that I guess it's easier to overlook if you have the questions about it. If you're like, no, 100%, I don't just believe her. I'm sure that this must be what happened. Scott obviously felt that it was important to get the female's perspective first, but I'm interested in your thoughts, just sort of on a personal level, and then also politically. What do you think that this means for Biden now that he has at least gone on record? He did an interview where he talked about it.
Well, I mean, I think kind of what everyone was just saying. There is an ick factor. We know that Biden has been accused in the past of being, invading personal space and a little bit creepy and everything else. But this type of thing that Tara Reid is, saying, it is odd with the timing, and all of a sudden that it escalates to this point where again he has been in the public eye since the early 70s, almost 50 years. And there's been plenty of time to vet him. He was vetted for VP, and the timing just feels a little odd. And I did say that last year with Ford as well. But the difference was with Ford, as I said, we should be able to have a real investigation instead of Republicans ramming it down into a nuclear option of the thinnest margin ever to elect a Supreme Court justice. It's sort of the same thing, and it goes with the Republicans' MO of impeachment and everything else. Given the time to have a real proper time to vet, and the same thing with this, because it does seem a little odd with the timing, and it seems done at a timing to be able to bring maximum notoriety to this situation. And I do believe she should be heard, but I also find it politically hypocritical as well when we've seen all the instances with Trump and somehow he's able just to glide by. And I keep seeing people in the Twitterverse and other places just posting about Biden and how, it's so inappropriate, but they're not talking about Trump. And I'd love to see someone, if they were really, really concerned about the situation, would say, hey, maybe we should also look into some of these allegations against Trump instead of it just being about Biden. Because to me, now you're politicizing it and you really don't care about women's rights or anything else. You're only just doing this for political points. And all I've seen out there are just the one-sided against Biden. And not saying that it's right or wrong, but if you're doing that, then you should also be bringing up these allegations against Trump. And I've heard horrible excuses now that it's, well, it was already decided in 2016, like Tamara was saying, like people voted for him after, the allegations came out and Access Hollywood tape came out. And so now it's not a big deal anymore. I'm like, no, that's not how it works. Doesn't mean that he gets a pass now to do whatever he wants, but now we have to focus on this allegation of Biden. It's just political.
This is an issue that people can be very selective on because of ideology. I mean, I'm sure there must be someone out there who treated the allegations to Brett Kavanaugh the same as President Trump, as Bill Clinton. I mean, there are many accusers of Bill Clinton from varying degrees of severity of what they're accusing, So, it's just like, okay, well, what are you willing to overlook? And I don't know. I mean, I wonder who's going to sit down with Tara Reid and try and get more from her,
for me personally, during the Kavanaugh trial, the thing that was for me the nail in the coffin, why I'm almost 100% sure that Kavanaugh is guilty, is his reaction. So
you mean I like beer? You didn't think that was enough?
Just the
okay.
0 to 60 intensification of the way that he was responding indicated to me that he knew. I believe he had no recollection, but I believe he was aware that this could have happened had he not been blackout drunk. Anyway,
again, he likes beer, so I mean that sort of goes. That's kind of like Oliver North saying, I'd like to invoke my Fifth Amendment privilege. Brett Kavanaugh is saying, well, I like beer. So therefore, I have no idea what you're talking about. In fact, I don't even know any of these people here. And by the way,
Yeah.
who wouldn't trade to just all of a sudden be right back last year where this was the only thing we were worried about? I'm not saying that it wasn't significant, but to think about, how much coverage that the Brett Kavanaugh confirmation had, like, oh my gosh, there wasn't even anybody wasn't even worried about the flu shot at that point. But anyway, so obviously this is an issue that certainly won't go away. I'm interested in both of your thoughts, or all three of your thoughts on both of the candidates, because I feel like it doesn't benefit either of them if they do a debate. I feel like Biden is not that well prepared for it, and Trump will be prepared with a pocket full of one-liners and zingers and things, but an actual debate. So I wonder if we're going to actually get a debate.
If you can call anything that comes out of Trump's mouth a zinger.
Look, I mean, the fact that there's people that print up T-shirts for things that he says, and look, if they were to do it virtually, and they were to do a debate on Zoom, well, he could just do what I'm about to do and put up a picture and just be like, yeah, sorry, what, so you don't want to do it virtually because that's too easy. So I don't know that either one of them is suited for a debate. I felt like the idea of, oh man, a Democrat will really, stick it to Trump on all the issues, but it's very easy. Look, Biden is very flappable. It's very easy to confuse him. And the person who confuses him the most is himself. So as we look ahead to some 5 months from now, I'm just sort of wondering what each of you think, and I'll go in reverse order this time. Scott, do you think that there are people in both of these camps just like, yeah, you don't want to go out there and debate this guy? Or should I not have started with Scott?
Uh-oh.
Because he's frozen. We'll get back to Scott on that. I'll ask you first, Chelsea.
Man, I had not even thought about this until this moment that you posed this question.
Wonky again.
It's all right. We'll get back to you, Scott. I've kicked the question over to Chelsea. We'll get back to you in a moment.
So normally I would say, well, tradition is this debate, and the purpose of the debate was to allow Americans to get to know their candidates. Not really sure if there was any other reason for the debates other than that. If that's the case, then the reason—
Get Jim Lehrer out of the House. I think that was the other reason.
All right. So if that's the only reason for the debates, there is probably enough information that's about these candidates that's able to get to the Americans to make a decision that maybe debates aren't really needed, but they are. I enjoy the tradition, although to pick somebody's to pick the guy or the woman for the job based on debate performance is just like, it doesn't seem to be the right task for testing the job skills that are needed once you're actually in the role. I mean, it's like a debate would be good for like a car salesman, but I don't think a debate would be great for like a surgeon, for example. So you'd want to see their skills in action. And there's got to be something like when you take the California bar exam, one of the tests that they give you is all of this information, like a fake case to read through. And then you've got to type up, answers to these questions. And it's sort of supposed to simulate like a real life case that a lawyer might handle. I mean, I think it would be better if we came up with some kind of, here is intelligence that something is coming from China. What do you do with it? But we make up scenarios that are not actually happening to see how they would respond, because I think that's more helpful. The other thing that I think would be better is if candidates gave us their proposed budgets and their explanation, and maybe not like a dollar amount budget, but a budget based on percentages. Like, here's 100% of the pie. How would you split it up and why? I think everybody can say, yes, education's important, and yes, healthcare is important, but how important are those things related to each other? Because everything can't be the most important thing for you. So
related to whether or not we should deregulate banks even further.
Sure. There you go. I mean, I think a budget would be better to help assess somebody's true priorities. I mean, after all, it is Joe Biden's quote that I included in my book, shameless plug, that's coming out soon, where he said, My dad used to say that don't ask a man what his values are, look at his budget, and that will tell you what his values are. So I think maybe we should switch to budgets, which are very social distancing compliant.
Well, I think that there's something to be said for that. I think that I think if we end up getting a debate, we're going to get one. You usually have 3 presidential debates and 1 vice presidential debate. I think that maybe just one big presidential debate. They'll give them an extra half an hour. But what do you think, Scott, in terms of this idea that there have to be people advising both of them, like you don't want to sit down with this guy, because I'm sure they both have their yes men and yes women that are like, oh my God, you'll be so great on the debate stage. I don't think either of them would be very good though.
I mean, I don't either. I know at one point, like we were saying, when Biden was even 8 years ago against Paul Ryan in the VP debate, and how good he was, and he basically tore Paul Ryan down just because he was just so on top of everything. And that's not the same Joe Biden, even from 2016 of where he is today. So I don't think either camp is going to be rushing to have either one of their candidates debate, because as we saw, Trump lost every single debate. 16.
Right, sure. Yeah.
I agree with Chelsea that seeing the budget would be an interesting, unique take. I think that the debates are a little bit more old school now, and they don't bring the same relevance that they might have done in the past, when you really didn't get to see a candidate as much as you can now. And this was an opportunity for people to really see the candidates and see how unflappable they could be and how they could deal with under the lights, under the pressure. Right, it goes back to Kennedy and Nixon, on TV. They had a place, and there is a tradition to it that I enjoy, like Chelsea was saying, but I think they've lost some of their original intention was. And now that you have 2 of the oldest men who have basically ever been in office at this point, it's definitely lends itself to be like, maybe we should look at new ways of doing this rather than debates, because it's not going to be good for either one of them. You're right.
Tamara, your thoughts? Do you have plans to do a presidential debate drinking game, or do you think?
I mean, that's pretty. You're kidding, but I was just about to say that if we're going to have a debate, I think it should be for pure entertainment purposes. I mean, not like
it should be pay-per-view.
Not ideally. Ideally, yeah. American citizens would like a debate where their political leaders will wax poetic on some very poignant issues that deeply concern American life. But that ain't the world we live in, my friends. This we have a reality star as a president. Propriety has gone out the window 4 years ago. So yes, I think we need a debate for the sake of entertainment and drinking games and memes and all of that stuff that's going to come out of it.
Yeah, the meme games are going to be very strong. Scott, you referenced, let's see, that was the 2012 vice presidential debate that was Biden and Paul Ryan. And my takeaway from that was that Biden won basically by just shaking his head a lot and having that like Heath Ledger like Joker smile on his face. He was always laughing at Paul Ryan, and there's nothing like more demeaning to someone than just like, I'm literally laughing at everything you say. And Paul Ryan just he spent too much time in the gym. He wasn't really in shape for that kind of back and forth. He was just like, I don't know what to say, so I'm just gonna kind of stick to my notes. And I don't think that that's basic. Well, Biden will definitely be debating somebody who's probably never set foot in a gym, but that's not really the point that I'm trying to make.
This is terrible. Was Paul Ryan Romney's VP?
Sure was.
Oh, I don't even remember.
Yeah, there were polls up until late October that said that he was going to be our vice president. There's actually a lot of polls that thought that was very likely to happen. Wow. Anyway. So that's just something I thought of while we were talking about Biden. I did want to talk a little bit about, we talked last week a lot about some of these states that are easing restrictions, and we live in one that kind of surprisingly to me yesterday said like, oh no, you'll be able to go to some non-essential businesses. And I was talking to my wife about it. It's like, well, you're going to have to order ahead and do curbside pickup, but sporting goods stores, toy stores, and non-essential retail stores. So she said, oh, you mean all the stuff we order on Amazon? I'm like, well, yeah. So you don't have, but I guess the whole point.
You're supporting Amazon?
No, of course not. No, I give all my money to buy.com, BUI.com, which was, I don't even know if it still exists, but it's where I used to buy stuff. We actually don't buy anything, but we've gotten occasional deliveries from Target.com. So yeah, but the point is, yeah, all this money that just reinforces my point. All this money is going to Amazon, and they're like, look, we got a store full of stuff. We don't have to let people in. Can they just give us money and we'll go bring it out to their car? So that seems to be the main thing, that they're sort of very slowly easing into phase two of this 4-stage reopening. And, stage 4 is probably like 2023, 2024, maybe, the large sporting events, concerts at the Rose Bowl, that's a good 3-4 years away. I don't see that happening anytime soon. But anyway, what are your thoughts, Tamara, as this idea becomes local? Again, it's a slight easing of restrictions, but you have to figure that we're starting to see, easing even basically everywhere except New York City. Like New York City, they're shut down till September at least, is what De Blasio said. And not a fan of De Blasio except for his great run for president. I think that was the best thing he ever did. But I think that he's at least being realistic. He's like, yeah, you guys aren't going to get to do anything. But what are your thoughts, Tamara, as we start to hear this idea that, we can start to do a little bit more of what we were doing?
I think it's too soon to tell. I think I said that last week too, because it's just we have projections that the places who have loosened restrictions will probably see a surge. So the city that has the highest, who's suddenly in a crisis is no longer going to be New York. It's going to be probably one of these cities in the South. That's what's projected. But I think it's too soon to tell because Texas, Georgia only eased restrictions a week ago, 5 days ago. So yeah. It's too soon to tell. I think, maybe in a week or two, we'll be able to answer this question. But I do think even as far as California goes, the people who are the most, everybody needs to wear a mask, stay in your home unless absolutely necessary, unless you need to walk your dog, unless you need, I keep feeling that at this point, everybody who, they're so ready to make sure that everybody is following rules and until, they want to go to the park or something like that. Like everybody,
or if you need an ice cream cone.
Yeah,
you can still, you can't sit down and eat it, but you can still walk into the Baskin Robbins down the street from my house. You can walk in and, they're not doing samples. That's the thing that's what they cut down. I was like, no more samples. But yeah, you can buy ice cream. That's fine. Come on in.
So my point is we're past the point where I think anybody's going to be any city is going to be completely safe. I mean, as LA had been, I think we've all probably noticed there's already an uptick in traffic and things like that. Like, I think everybody's been on lockdown for so long now that even the people who are like, no, I'm staying the absolute safest and everybody else should, they're unintentionally easing their own restrictions at this point. So
yeah, and before I ask the same of both Chelsea and Scott, do you think? I think that Gavin Newsom and Andrew Cuomo have been sort of at the forefront of kind of just really sticking to their beliefs. But do you think that Gavin Newsom, our governor here in California, do you think that he was at all pressured by the amount of protests that there have been in really just the last few days? Do you think that this is in any way a reaction to that? Because, people in Orange County definitely need to go to the beach and get on the golf course. I mean, anybody's ever been to Orange County knows that that's pretty much what they need there. Do you think that it's at all a reaction to what he's seen going on in the state, Tamara?
Oh, me?
Yeah. Because I realized I meant to ask that at the first part. And then before I ask everybody except you, I wanted to get your thoughts on it too.
Yeah, I think he's feeling that because there's been so many more rural counties in California that have specifically said, okay, can we have some sort of leeway since we don't have the numbers that the more urban areas have had? I think he has had to bend a little bit towards
Yeah. Yeah. I was reading
state's
about one of those
restrictions.
communities that like just last week so they have one case and they've quarantined their one person, and they hope that they're able to contain it. But I think that I can understand that pressure because California is such a large state and it's such a such a diverse terrain that you have these really rural counties that like, look, this isn't a problem. This hasn't been a problem for us. And of course it could become a problem. So Chelsea, your thoughts kind of on all that. One, the easing, and if you think that Newsom has felt some pressure up
I
there in
think
Sacramento.
I'll start with the second question first. I'm sure that there has been pressure. I don't think necessarily it's from the protesters. I feel he's more disciplined than that. But states also want to reopen because they make money when the economy is going. So as much as I believe that he is prioritizing our health, I think he's also aware of the fact that tax money is down if there aren't sales being made. So that's also in the back of his mind, even without the protesters. But as far as the easing of the restrictions go, I mean, I guess I noticed myself in Tamara's camp. Yesterday, I tried to deposit a check via the mobile app, and the app wouldn't do it. It wouldn't read the number, and so I had to go into the bank. It was the first time I'd been in the bank since the lockdown happened, and I was very uncomfortable, even though there was a security person that made sure we were all 6 feet apart, and it just was very
Yeah, and
uncomfortable.
also like bank tellers are always behind those plastic things anyway. At least any of the banks that I go to, So yeah, I mean, I guess there are levels already in place, but yeah, look, I did something that was definitely an unnecessary trip, but again, I have two small children, so on Saturday, my wife and we went to a drive-in out near Pomona. And yes, we came up with bathroom contingency plans because we didn't get out of the car. And it was great. The kids had fun. They saw that Trolls movie that people can now get digitally, and they had fun with it. It was nice. It was like an almost normal evening, except that there were a lot of other people there that some of them had masks on, but people had their masks like down under their nose. And I was just like, well,
Yeah.
then just don't wear it. Like if you're gonna do that, don't wear it. You had people who weren't wearing it, and you had people who were like middle-aged, older people who I'm like, I think out of anybody, you should be wearing it. You should be worried for yourself, There were kids running around, and that sort of made me nervous for the kids. Our kids were, strapped into their car seats, so the way they should be. So it was, and again, it's not a trip I needed to take, but I've talked to friends that have done things like drive from Burbank up to Oxnard, which for people that don't know, that's about an hour away. Turn around and just come home. They never get out of the car. It's just to go somewhere, just to see something, just to get there, and look,
all the people going to the poppies.
Right. Yeah, I know. But then a lot of people are getting out and like, traipsing around on the poppies. So I understand the desire for things. And I feel like, okay, sure, I didn't need to take that trip from a literal like essential service. But for mental health, it's like, yeah, you know what? Take a drive if you're not going to go anywhere. To me, it seems okay. I think you'll have people that'll be like, no, you should never go out of your house. So I don't know. I think that it's hard to really figure out where everybody is at their comfort level. But I mention it because Chelsea, you're right. When you see, like when I see people that are walking, all right, people on a really hot day when they're running and they don't have the mask on, but they go out of their way to not run in front of us. I'm like, okay, so you have your mask, but I feel like, you're going to hyperventilate if you wear it while you're running, but you're not running near people. I'm like, all right, that doesn't bother me as much.
That's my guilty pleasure. I run. No, I was just saying that's me. I run without a mask and I feel really guilty about it, but
right. Yeah, but if you ended up with like a family of 8 in your way, you wouldn't like, well, now
no, I run into the street. Yeah.
So I don't know. I mean, it just kind of depends. And look, I know that people who are watching the show in other parts of the country, they're like, yeah, I mean, it's like enough already. Let's just go outside, What do you think about all this, Scott? Sort of the local issue, but as it applies to people across the country that are having these restrictions eased. It's always weird to tell if Scott is frozen or he's just not moving.
Well,
There he is.
No, I know. I think my internet's being used by the household right now. So it's
What is he? Is he running Napster out
Aw.
of
yeah. I would
there?
say there's two things to it. I think one, what here, let me stop the video and see if
Yeah,
that
let's just
helps a
click off
little
the
bit.
video. Yeah.
I don't know. Yeah, that's what I just did. Let me see if
Great.
that helps.
That's
Does
better.
that help at all?
Mhm.
Well, you're much less handsome this way, but it sounds better. Yeah.
I was gonna say it's there's two prongs to it, and I think what Gavin Newsom did was more of a psychological thing by saying we're going into phase two, because it's really not much different than where we are right now. It's yes, there's a few more stores open, but you can't go inside, and you have to do curbside, but no restaurants are open, no hair place, nothing, no movie theaters. So it really doesn't change much from what we've already seen, but I think it's more of a psychological boost to say, hey, we're trying to go in the right direction. And what Chelsea was saying, it's a way to start getting some more money into the state coffers, because, at the end of the day, the state does need money and it's losing billions of dollars. So it's more psychological than anything. I think if you saw what they did the Orange County beaches, the negotiated time is almost a joke. It's 6 to 10 a.m. during the week, weekdays only right now. So that doesn't allow a lot of people to really be able to go out and enjoy the beach. So it was an interesting compromise that Orange County did with Governor Newsom, but it doesn't really, again, it's a psychological win in a way, but
It's good for the
having
surfers.
beaches
That's
open
when
for
they're out there.
yeah, but that's it. I mean, it doesn't really help families during the week. It doesn't really help people when you have to be off the beach 10 a.m. So it's an interesting dichotomy, but it's more of a psychological boost for most people to say we're getting out of this. I think what's going to be interesting are the states that went more full force, like in Georgia, even Florida and Texas, to see how those cases do. But I do agree, like what Tamara was saying too, there are parts of the state of California that have virtually no cases at all. So there should be a staggered approach. And people like us here in LA County, sadly, are going to be the last to be able to kind of resume normalcy, because we have over 10 million people in the county. So unfortunately, we're in it for the long haul, but we could probably see some different phases for different parts of the state. And it'll be interesting to see how that kind of shapes the next few weeks out.
Yeah, I know. I definitely agree that it's an evolving situation, and I'm just I've said many weeks. There's two things that I'm really focused on in when my kids' preschool is open again, and we're not going to bring them back on the first day. We're going to wait a couple weeks, but I might go to Supercuts the first day it's open. I'm just starting to think that you want to talk about an essential service. It's me getting a haircut, but obviously I'm mostly joking, like 80%, 40% joking. But anyway, we're almost out of time, and I do want to talk about. Look, there's campaigns to run. So the Trump campaign is working on America's comeback, is what they're talking about. So they're going to talk about sort of how the Democrats, they have an ad that something that seems like it happened 15 years ago, which was Nancy Pelosi ripping up the speech at the end of the State of the Union. I literally hadn't thought about that in, I don't know, at least 2 months, probably 2.5. And I'm like, oh yeah, that was a big thing for like a minute for, a small number of people. But I guess it's useful imagery when it's like, hey, you remember how you don't like her? This is what she thinks of you. So the idea of America's comeback, I think, is a good campaign, but is it useful for the guy who's really largely put you in this situation to be talking about, like, well, I'm clearly the guy to do the campaign? Wouldn't that be a better opposition campaign? Like, Ronald Reagan, after 4 years of Jimmy Carter, he's like, it's morning in America because the grown-ups are back, basically. So isn't it just more like, yeah. The America's comeback will happen, but not if you vote for the guy that's using the America's comeback slogan. What do you think about this notion of the comeback, Chelsea? And remember, we are running low on time, and I want to make sure to get Tamara and Scott in here.
Yeah, I don't envy any person that tries to take on America's comeback, because I don't think it's going to go very well. This kind of comeback has to happen from the ground up, and most Americans have very little money to be spending. And with things with the virus being so uncertain, are we going to have to go back on lockdown? Things like that. People are not going to be spending freely. So 70% of our GDP is consumer spending. I think it's going to be down no matter how much he tries to bring it back. But I don't know how long it'll take for that to be measurable in our economy. So I think it's a great line, America's comeback, but I don't see it happening anytime soon.
So yeah, that goes back to my prediction of phase 4. Like America's comeback, it should really be whoever's running in 2024. That should be their slogan, right? Because it won't come back before that.
Well, America's comeback has to be with how are you going to help lower to middle income people? That's the
Sure.
only way to bring it back. And I don't think Trump has a plan focused on that population. It's just more tax cuts, I would think, for the wealthy. And like if you saw 60 Minutes, some really weird farm subsidies that are, we can all collectively get together, say we own a farm, and get massive money for it. It's amazing. I don't know why we haven't done it until now.
Let's start the Trump Report Farm. The 4 of us. We'll all get farmer hats. It'll be perfect.
Yes, we should. And so because I don't think he has a real plan that will help Americans from the bottom up, I don't think that it's going to work, even if he has a chance to implement it.
What do you think, Tamara? President Trump touting America's comeback, and a big part of that is him being on the forefront of like, these states really should be reopening, and he's usually right out there applauding states that are reopening, saying like, "Yep, get back to work, everybody! Come on, we got to come back."
Well, first of all, Christian, did you know that Fenway Park has its own farm? They grow some food there. I wonder if that.
I did not know that. Do you think that they have a Fenway Frank tree that grows Fenway Franks?
They don't have cows at Fenway Park, but they do grow some of their concession stand food there.
I love that.
Anyway, if the Nancy Pelosi if the Nancy Pelosi tearing up the speech thing is any sort of like, we have to get back to proper behavior coming from the Trump campaign, that's just complete bullshit. You mentioned Morning in America. Did you know? We all heard about the video that came out from a conservative group, anti-Trump conservative group that George Conway is a part of.
I actually haven't heard about this video.
Yeah, it just came out. Trump went on a tweet rampage in the middle of the night last night, calling them losers, and they've never.
It's pretty great.
The video was called Morning in America, to not parody because they're on the side of Ronald Reagan. It's a conservative group, but to invigorate. So I think what you're saying has just been done by this conservative group, who is in a better position than the Trump administration is to be like, we can't keep acting like children.
Yeah, no, look, I think that you're going to have your never Trumpers. They're probably a lot more clever than the actual Trumpers. I mean, I think if you're going to like ask like Bill Kristol, formerly of the Weekly Standard, like, all right, well, you don't like Trump. What would you put together? It'd probably be more clever than, what do you think, Donald Jr.? Anyway, final thought from you, Scott, before we have to wrap up, sort of on this approach that President Trump is taking of America's comeback.
Well, I was going to say, to add to Tamara's, it was Morning in America, like MOU.
Oh, yeah. Good point.
Yeah, so it not the morning, like, so that's the difference. And I thought it was a brilliant strategy, and it was a brilliant ad, and Trump just tweeted again like a half hour ago, going off on them again, which makes me laugh anytime that he's miserable. But I've been seeing a lot of his yes men and women posting these things now, like, he did it the first time, he'll do it again, once we reopen America, like, the economy will be the best ever. But I think that's all he has, to be honest with you. And we've talked about this for years. The only thing that he has had is the economy, which he was handed to begin with. But people have looked at that and said he's continued it to be able to, keep it going. And that's the one thing he's had. And if he doesn't have the economy, he doesn't have anything. So I believe that this is his only strategy. And so it's going to be like, hey, if you let us reopen the government again, we will be able to do great things again. And it'll be even better because we did it the first time around. So it's silly, but it's all he has at this
Well,
point.
yeah, look,
essentially.
states with like 34% unemployment, that's all a Democratic hoax anyway. So I think that he can run on the strength of it. And look, when we hear the siren, it means we must be out of time. And Chelsea, make sure you don't miss our show next week, because you know what I want to talk about? I want to spend a lot of time talking about it. Meat shortages in this country. I intentionally didn't talk about it this week because I'm like, I know it's going to kind of be the whole show. So, but until then, you can keep in touch with all of us on our various social medias. Tamara, where can people find you?
Hey, Tamra _ on Twitter.
And Chelsea Galicia.
Chelsea Galicia.
I love it. Just like that. And Scott Moore, the birthday boy.
Yeah, on Twitter at SMAN80. That's SMAN80.
And I am, of course, on Twitter and Instagram at ChristianDMZ. And for some lighter conversation, you can find me Thursdays over on Popcorn Talk, talking about Marvel movie news. Not much news over there, but we still talk about Marvel and movies, and we have a lot of fun. So find us there at 11 a.m. Pacific, 2 p.m. Eastern over on Popcorn Talk. That's all the time we have now. Thanks, as always, to Ryan in the booth or in Mission Control, wherever he is. And we'll see everybody next week.
Bye.
Bye, guys.
Our founder, Keven Undergaro, and me, Maria Menounos, would like to thank you for tuning in to AfterBuzz TV. Remember, we're not just the first, we're the biggest in the world, and we're the only destination for all your favorite TV shows. Whatever you crave, we've got it. So go to AfterBuzzTV.com and check out our lineup. Buzz you later.
The views expressed herein are those of the hosts only and do not necessarily reflect the views of AfterBuzz TV or its owners or principals.